Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Ryujinx, and Ryujinx got a few updates. So as of version 1.1.1259, for AMD GPUs, they fixed a crash in Luigi's Mansion 3 on the sand level. As of version 1266, Wrath of the White Witch will no longer render a black background when the 1.0.2 update has been applied. And as of the most recent update, version 1267, the Vulkan backend gets some improvements. It fixes black textures present in most of Hogwarts Legacy. It fixes most graphical rendering in Penny's Big Breakaway. And it fixes grass and other particle effects appearing blocky in The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. Ryujinx is 100% free, it's open source, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Right now it's the best Switch emulator on PC. Next up, we're still talking about Switch emulation, and this time about Sudachi, which is a fork of Yuzu, and Sudachi just got a very interesting new update. So at the time of filming, the latest update here is the easy to remember V0E54FCF, and this update adds something you may be familiar with, the Switch menu, Q Launch. On top of that, they said they've added in preliminary support for Switch firmware version 18.0.0. For those who may be unaware, as far as I know, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, Q Launcher was a part of Yuzu before Yuzu was taken down. It was hidden from the end user as there were some bugs with it. And Suyu, and now Sudachi, has unhidden it for the end user, and there are still some bugs with it. Next up, we're talking about Pretendo, the free and open source replacement for Nintendo 3DS and Wii U servers. And I would argue Pretendo is about to get a lot more important, as if it wasn't already. So here's Pretendo's post. Dawn of the final day. Nintendo Network is scheduled to shut down Monday, April 8th. This means there's just over 30 hours remaining, and even less now at the time of filming, until Nintendo pulls the plug on the 3DS and Wii U. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they're still looking to get some information from dumps, and at this point in time, they've got 2,657 total dumps. Data for 64 of 80 Wii U titles, and data for 165 of 358 3DS titles. If you are curious about this one and wanted to learn more about it, I'll drop a couple of helpful links in the description below. Time is ticking. Next up, we're talking about the App Store, and just the other day we talked about this when Apple decided to allow emulators on their App Store. But there may be a caveat or two that we're going to have to pay attention to. So based on the verbiage used in the guidelines, it appears that things are still a little bit muddy. For example, some people are interpreting it as you can't bring your own ROMs to the emulator. The emulator will have to include games that it can legally distribute, for example, homebrew. Now, if you can't bring your own games into the emulator, I would argue it would severely limit the usefulness or interest of the emulator from other people. It seems that even PPSSPP is unsure as to what's going to happen. They say it all depends on how Apple interprets their own rules. If it turns out that the rules now allow emulators with ISO and ROM pickers, PPSSPP will come to the App Store later this year. If not, well, it won't. On top of that, it appears that Apple is still not allowing JIT access to non-browsers, which is really going to impact emulators. For older emulators out there, probably not so much, but if you're looking for something past the PSP, not having JIT will impact performance. So it seems as if things are not all sunshine and rainbows yet for emulation on Apple. We'll have to wait and see as to what Apple decides as to whether or not people can bring ROMs to these emulators. And Yabis and Shiro appears to be testing this theory out. They've submitted their Sega Saturn emulation for approval to Apple, and we'll wait and see what happens. But moving on, and next up we're talking about PS2 emulation with PCSX2. And PCSX2 got a small update here that improves DirectX. So with one of the latest updates, there were some improvements to Direct3D, and the rationale here says make hardware blending suck even less and will help Direct3D. And they tested it with various games that were previously broken on Direct3D or needed higher blending. And we can see improvements here to stuff like the B-movie game. Before it was a lot darker and arguably a lot harder to see, and after it's looking a lot better. Flatout 2 also looks a heck of a lot better, a lot brighter. So does Metal Gear Solid 3, as well as Power Rangers Super Legends. And someone even pointed out that this fixes the black spots in the forest in Metal Gear Solid 3 using DirectX 11 at basic blending. So for those who are not using OpenGL or Vulkan for PCSX2, you may want to pick up the latest update. Next up, it appears that Tommy Tallarico has got himself in a bit of hot water again. According to this Time Extension article, the musician behind VGL's Zelda Medley hints that Tommy Tallarico is selling arrangements he doesn't own. So Laura Intravia took to Twitter and says, "The phase when you discover someone is selling your sheet music illegally. You report this to the major symphony orchestra who is performing it. And they say, sorry, not our problem." Laura also says, "Unfortunately, I have no doubt the individual selling the sheets is giving the orchestra a very different story of events. The fact is, I never signed a contract where I gave anyone exclusive rights to the sheet music. I would never have agreed to such a thing." If you are curious as to some of the music they're talking about, I'll drop a link to Laura's video in the description below, and I do recommend giving it a listen. Next up, we're talking about something absolutely crazy in terms of prices. I'll drop a link to this tweet in the description below, and I guess feel free to make your own opinions about it. But some sealed games were found and sold for crazy prices. The kicker here is that none of these games were even graded. Not that I would argue grading matters, but it generally jacks up the price. So Castlevania sold for $90,100. I'm not joking with ya. Burger Time sold for $11,377. Trojan sold for $6,988, and Kid Icarus sold for $81,988.36, which is a whole lot of money. There's no way I could ever justify paying that kind of money, nor the value of those games. It makes me wonder if something a little suspect is going on here. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. And speaking about money, if you've got some money laying around and wanted to attend the Pokemon World Championships, it was announced they're being held in Honolulu, Hawaii this year between August 16th and 18th. I'm assuming it'll also stream via Twitch, which will be a little bit cheaper. But at the same time here, this is a pretty gorgeous place to have it. Moving on, and we're talking about the free and open source media player Kodi. And Kodi just got a brand new update to version 21.0. They're calling this one Omega, and there's a whole bunch of improvements here, bug fixes, and brand new features. And I mean a whole bunch. It's been a year since their last update. They now have FFmpeg 6.0 support. It's also worth pointing out that the Ubuntu PPA has been retired. They're encouraging people to go with Flatpak. If you are curious about this one and wanted to read through the entire changelog, which will take you a while, I'll drop a link to it in the description below and feel free to check it out. Next up, this is a quick one, but a good one. A long-lost port of P47 for the Sega Mega Drive Genesis, the only Jellicoe game for the system, is going to be released. Unfortunately, I've got no word yet on the actual release date or where it's going to be released. As soon as I know more, you'll know more. In the meantime, if you wanted to hear the soundtrack, it was released a number of years ago, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Moving on, if you're a fan of Fallout 2, you might be excited to know that there's a fan-made Fallout 2 remake in the works. And it's translating this game from 2.5D to a full 3D first-person game. Now, I think I just said translation, which is not at all the correct word to use in this instance. It's a full-blown recreation. This is a massive project. It's called Project Arroyo, or Fallout 4 Project Arroyo, and I've got no release date for this one just yet, but they are looking for developers. And speaking about developers, it appears a whole bunch of developers have worked on the unofficial PC port of Spider-Man 2. And they're already at version 1.3.5. It appears this update was pretty big and fixed a whole bunch of different things, and at this point I'm wondering if Sony is just going to take this version of the game and sell it as their own. And speaking about PC ports, last up here we're talking about the Crash Team Racing PC port. I'll drop a link to this video in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. They just provided their update number 3. They say here that the PC port is now 70% finished. The Adventure Garage now has a working UI, and in Time Trial, ghosts are now fully implemented. It seems as if it's a matter of when, not if, the PC port gets finished, and they say when the PC port is finished, we plan to shift focus to content expansion. And last up here, this one is pretty interesting if you're a fan of Manhunt. A debug version of Manhunt 2 on PSP has surfaced online, dated February 4th, 2007. This is around 9 months before the final release of this game. So Nathan says apparently this beta build has Leo being your first fight and also has a lot of unused and jank executions that didn't make it into the final version. This one is up over on the Hidden Palace, but unfortunately there's not a whole lot of information about it just yet. I'm assuming it's going to be filled out soon. If you wanted to learn more about it, I guess I'll drop a link in the description below. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.